follow the steps?
Snug?
Yes, in order. Oh, hey there. Welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett. If you've never listened to the show before, in addition to providing entertaining and informative photography-related info, I also go on adventures with the crew of the Starship Fibonacci. Also, if it is indeed your first time listening, be sure to subscribe to the show. If you're already subscribed, you, dear listener, are awesome. Now go leave a review and tell your friends about the show. Spread the word. Right now, Golden Hour and I are trying to relocate a rare and dangerous life form back to its native habitat. We have protocols that we follow in these sorts of situations, but Golden is having a lot of trouble focusing.
Snug. Snug. Snug.
Yes, you have to secure the containment grid before you let go of the manual release. Otherwise, it's not secure. There's a system in place for a reason. Speaking of systems, on this episode, I'm talking to Annemie Tonken, host of the This Can't Be That Hard podcast, about putting systems in place to help your business run more smoothly. She even has a freebie for y'all, all after the break.
Snug. Snug, snug.
Well, we have to get the door shut before we can lock it. Attention photographers, say hello to your all-in-one studio management solution, Sprout Studio. Are you drowning in a sea of spreadsheets, struggling to manage client relationships, or yearning for a streamlined way to showcase your stunning photos? It's time to grow into a new era of efficiency and creativity with Sprout Studio, the ultimate online software suite for photographers. Bid farewell to chaos with Sprout Studio's CRM software, which helps you get organized, save time, and deliver an unparalleled experience. Manage client interactions effortlessly and watch your business bloom. Showcase, share, and sell your photos. Sprout Studio's galleries are designed to captivate and leave your clients in awe of your photographic prowess. No more chasing payments with Sprout Studio's online invoicing feature, which simplifies and automates how your clients pay you, get paid faster, and spend more time behind your lens. You can also design stunning emails and effortlessly create campaigns that leave a lasting impression. Sprout Studio's email marketing tool is your secret weapon to staying connected with your audience. And be better prepared and get feedback you need with Sprout Studio's questionnaires, which allow you to ask clients questions, ensuring every shoot is personalized and perfect. So, is your business ready to blossom? Sign up with our link, getsproutstudio.com/?via equals Casey-Fatchett and enjoy an exclusive 20% off your annual plan. Transform your workflow, elevate your client experience, and watch your photography business flourish. Get the link in our episode notes and grow your business and save 20% with Sprout Studio. Hello, and welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett, and I am here today with Annemie Tonken. Welcome. You're here to talk to us about systems and photography, but before we do that, we're going to roll the dice breaker, and it's a 2. Okay, worst photography-related advice or business-related advice you've ever received.
Oh, man. Worst photography. Oh, that's a hard one. There's so many bad things out there. You know what drives me really nuts, though? And this is less to do with the worst that I've ever received, but something that I see get thrown around a lot is blanket advice about you have to charge X amount in order to be profitable. It like gets my hackles up every single time because my response is great. How do you know what someone else's level, is needed for profitability? It all depends on so many different factors. And certainly you can look at a setup and say, from the outside, that looks doubtful.
Right.
But yeah, so I feel like profitability has a lot of different components to it. And I think that it is possible to achieve in many different ways, but
everybody has to make their own special sauce, if that makes sense. And I think that that bugs me too, because like you don't know where that person lives and what there's some of the costs associated with advertising or what their rent is or whatever things their expenses are, and just throwing out like, hey, it's like when people do like, oh, what are the camera settings for that shot? Like that's automatically going to translate into you going out using those exact camera settings and getting the exact same photo. It's not.
It's not.
It's yeah, one size doesn't fit all
No.
on those sorts of things.
And we're all glad that it doesn't, because if it did, then we wouldn't have, fast food and high-end fancy restaurants. Like
Right.
that doesn't, those things can coexist, and they serve a different purpose.
Exactly. So, like you have to take all of the factors into consideration: volume, market, all sorts of things. Speaking of, like, this is almost like something that having a system for would help with, and that's what you're here to talk about today.
It is. Systems are kind of the thing that I am most likely to geek out on in the world. I feel like it is and I've been in business now since 2010. And I don't want to say limped along. Like I feel like I actually got off to a pretty good start from the beginning, thanks in no small part to some good advice that I got. But I came into photography like a lot of people do, with no business background and no real sense as to how to run a business. And so I was doing a lot of just taking other people's advice and, trying to put it into my business. And I was able to make that work. However, it was not for probably 6 or 7 years in my business the first 6 or 7 years of my business was very much like a hodgepodge. And it wasn't until Actually, I know exactly what it was. The first major systems breakthrough that I had was when I finally took the time to set up a CRM. And at that time, so 2015, 2016, it was not, there were not as many CRMs available for photographers. Because I came from a healthcare background, I had never even heard the term CRM. Like that was just, it was new to me. So I was like, I don't need that. I've got my Google spreadsheet. I'm good.
Yeah. For anybody who's not familiar, CRMs are client relationship management programs.
Right. And sometimes called CMS, like a client management software. But basically, it's a single hub where, all of the different pieces live. So you can do invoicing there. You can hold your contracts there. And in a good CRM, you're going to also have the ability to put together workflows. And that was really the piece of it that kind of blew my mind, because, here I had been managing all these checklists on pieces of paper and Google spreadsheets, and mostly in my brain. And when you get to a certain level of busyness, you start to drop the ball. Yeah. Like it's just not possible to hold all those
juggle
things.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
I had the exact same problem, and probably around the same time frame, even though it was early. Like I had to create something for myself because I was doing the same sort of thing. Like I had an Excel spreadsheet for my expenses, and like there were like multiple sheets depending on like for income, expenses, everything categorized, and I like type it in each time. And now like when I finally, there were I would say two distinct points for me. One was I decided to go work at another studio because I had never worked for anybody else as a photographer. Sure. I went in as their like studio manager, which was funny because like, what did I know? But I got a chance to see A, what I thought they did right, and B, what I thought, no, this isn't how you should do this. Just from like learning from their mistakes and going like, okay, this is how I would do things differently as a business. So I kind of like, that was one step for me. And then the second, again, same thing, CRM, it changed my life. It changed my life so much for the better. And any photographers out there, if you're not using one, I would get it. It's going to save you time. It's going to save you money. Anybody asks if it's worth it, it's worth it.
It's worth it.
It's worth it at the end of the year, keeping track of your expenses and just like pulling up, oh, here's my expense sheet to do my taxes with, or keeping track of leads, or, like you said, workflow management. It's all like you can put it in one place. You don't have to, like you said, have it on, as I tend to do, write 1,000 Post-it notes.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, there is sort of the beginning where if you don't know what you're doing, you're not necessarily collecting data or doing any, you're just, somebody calls, you try and book that one client, you go serve that one client, and, you hope for the good sale at the end. And then the next client comes along and you do the same thing over and over again until you start to collect information about what what patterns you're seeing, what's working, what's not working, what what your average sale is, what your average costs are, all those kinds of things. You're at, we'll call it level 1. Level 2 is when you start to collect that data, but you don't necessarily do anything with it. You don't even really probably look at it. You're like, nope, I collected it. I'm feeling good about myself. And it is good. That's good to have. But a CRM is one of those pieces of software. And systems are not at all always related to software, but but this one thing that it opened my eyes to the possibility. The nice thing about a CRM is it makes all that data available to you, digestible, easy to look at on a quarterly basis or an annual basis. And so yeah, that I'm right there with you when I am talking to someone who's newer in business and they say, do you have any advice?
Yeah.
I'm always like, do you have a CRM? No,
Yeah.
great. Start there.
Start there because it, like you said, it captures all that data for you and makes it digestible. I think that's part of I barely kept track of what happened with leads.
Sure.
What was happening. And once I started doing that in my CRM, I was seeing what was the reasons people didn't choose me or what
Right.
happened. Like, just lost contact with them. They didn't write back. They hired somebody else. I was out of their price range. All of those things, once you start to add them up and you go huh, oh wait, 75% of my leads are people I'm out of their market. I'm out of their
Right.
budget.
Right.
Then I need to be marketing myself
My
differently.
marketing is wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm bringing in too many people who are under budget. So
Yeah.
that I got to change things. And being able to see those patterns. And one of the things I always tell people about, how do I go? You always get the question, how do I go full time as a photographer? Well, you have to be ready to scale up because
Right.
if you're even when I was part time and I went full time, I wasn't ready. I didn't realize what that was going to involve as far as making sure I met my needs every month. And, I was making expenses and all that stuff and having it planned out and having the budget, but also seeing the patterns. For me, weddings were the majority of my income for a long, long time, and seeing when the money was coming in,
Right.
how to work my contracts for when payments arrive, so that I wasn't oh, I'm going to get all this money, towards the end, or I'm going to trying to spread things out a little bit,
Right.
so it makes my cash flow more manageable. When you see those patterns, it makes running your business so much easier, and you're able to scale up
Right.
when you start getting more work, because you've eliminated a lot of the mess of
Yeah.
just having everything sort of scattered and all over the place.
Yeah. So we kind of dived into this conversation. And I realized that I didn't do the thing that I always like to do when I talk about systems first, which is kind of define what I mean by systems, because I feel like systems is one of those words that can get thrown around and people, it's like I realized this as I started to say oh, it doesn't have to be software. So when I talk about systems, I just mean you have a repeatable process in place that you use each and every time that you are in a particular situation or your client's in a particular situation. And by using that particular set of, sequence of processes or steps or whatever, then you get an outcome that is more or less predictable. So the thing that really kind of was that aha moment for me with the CRM was that workflow process, because when I sat down to set up my first CRM, it said, okay, so what's your workflow for a portrait client? And I was like, what is my workflow for a portrait client? And it was a really amazing exercise, right? To sit down and think. And I had been doing it for 5 or 6 years. I was a full-time photographer for 3 or more years at that point. And I had never really, I had this checklist, but it was a little different because my checklist was more have we gotten to this milestone? Have we gotten to this milestone? So I would sort of check them off afterward. Whereas the workflow felt more proactive, where I was saying first this, then this, then this. So I built this workflow in my CRM, and it really was the first time that I sat down, I was like, oh, and you know what? This email should go out 3 days after this other event or whatever. And so it wasn't just the order of operations, it was also this time delay. And what's beautiful, just to kick it back to the CRM conversation one more time, is that the CRM was there to be like, hey, today's the day that you need to send that email.
Right.
And I didn't have to hold that information in my head. But that basic definition of systems, what I like about it is that it really takes the like the mystery factor out of systems. This is not something that you need to be like a Coca-Cola sized corporation to incorporate systems into your business. So it may be that everyone listening is like, yeah, get on with it. But I always like to level the playing field,
right.
just to
Know
make
what
sure.
you're like, just so that we're all talking about things on the same, like we're all on the same page. Yeah, and I agree. Like it's there are ways, and we can go. I feel like we can go on for about CRMs all the time. One of those things for me is like building in automated invoicing stuff, like because that used to be a thing. We're like, damn it, I got to remember to send them and try to collect it. But having that CRM where like it automatically sends it out on the date that here's a reminder, you have a payment due here, and here's where you can pay online instead of me. Or if you want to send a check, here's the address to send it to and who to make it out to. Has all of it there. Automation has saved me, like, because taking that time, and I think that is one of the things that can seem overwhelming at first for people who haven't done this before. They're like, oh, how do I do it? Well, you start by doing. You start by like taking in chunks. You set things up, and like I think that one of the things that I've talked to people on various user groups for software and stuff like that, like where people will be like, oh my God, it's going to take so long to set up my CRM. And it's like, you just do it one piece at a time. Like you don't have to do all of it at once.
Right.
Like you can take a little time with it and be like, okay, this is the next thing. This is the next one, and chew it up, because otherwise you're going to feel overwhelmed and you're not going to use it to the full capacity that it can help you.
Yeah. I mean, that is sort of the flip side of the coin, is that a lot of these pieces of software, especially these days, are so robust and have so many different features that you can kind of freeze up deer in the headlights style when you first try and, enter that world. Don't be afraid. It's just, to your point, a matter of like eating the elephant one bite at a time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I don't know, like when I started out and I was trying to get more of a system together, it was before CRMs were really a thing for photographers or creatives of any kind, which, I've recommended them to wedding planners and, florists, anybody who is involved in the event industry or a creative industry, like that can really help them manage their relationships. Oh, it's right there in the word. But it like that thing didn't exist, and I was like, there was a point where I was like, maybe I need to build an app for this. And then all of a sudden, like a bunch came out, and I was like, good, I don't have to bother with it. But there were all these things that I was sitting there thinking, like, I want to have my client's phone number and email address available on my phone, and like all these things that have access. So like, if I'm going to a shoot and something comes up and I want to be able to contact them immediately, and like, I don't want to have them necessarily in my contacts in my phone, but like I can pull up my software and be like, oh, there it is. Send them a text message. Boop. Let them know that I'm running 15 minutes late because of traffic or whatever.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things are wonderful to have at your fingertips. And then, but then you sit there and to be able to, one of the other things I find helpful about it is the way in which you're able to, most of them have like a capture of information where either you can put it into your inquiry form and have that just like automatically go into your CRM, or you can capture some of that information yourself, put it in manually. One of the things I like to do is then afterwards send the client portal to my clients and say like, hey, please correct any information that might be wrong here. Fill in whatever you want to fill in. Like they can put in their birthdays and anniversaries, so I can like send them a little birthday present or a gift of some kind, like on their birthday or whatever, like that. Those sorts of things, if they choose, like that's whatever information they want to share, they can share.
I love that.
Which I've helped builds the relationship and helps us strengthen the bond.
Totally. Well, and I work with families, and I actually have a membership program where I work when families sign up for my membership. I work with them on an annual basis, and they come back and back and back, which is great. But I'm terrible, terrible with names, like real bad. And so, what my CRM allows me to do, obviously, is keep track of everybody's names. But I also, it's like oftentimes kids are showing up as I work with people over
Right.
the years. So I'm entering their birth date, and I send little, birthday cards and things like that to my clients. And I never have to worry about showing up with a family that I've worked with 3 or 4 years prior
Right.
and blanking on,
Who the kids
kid number
are.
two's
Yeah.
name. I mean, like it's totally happened to me before. And having that information at my fingertips always, and not having to like sit down and plan for it before every session, which is what I
Right.
used to do, really is. I mean, it's a convenience factor, but it can be so much more too.
Yeah. It saves you time. Like, 'cause you can go back and dig through the emails and, find, well,
Yeah,
I'm going to type this in, like, search for this, like let's go through our email chain and see if they mentioned it in there somewhere. Oh no, I don't have
totally.
to do that. Like I can like
Yeah,
just go into find the client find their file and just be like, oh yeah, this is where that is. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Make your life so much more simple. Like there's, when I went into the cost of setting up systems for myself, not just through CRMs, but just the things that I was doing, it was always a matter of, it wasn't always necessarily the expense of it.
Hmm.
Like, this is going to cost me money to do this thing, whether it's how I store my photos. I
Hmm.
have a whole system for storage and archival of images and redundancies and things like that. That I was like, okay, this is going to cost money, but it's going to probably save me money in the long run. And it's also just going to save me the stress of worrying about what's going to happen. Um, because, everybody's like, oh, I've never had a problem. You don't have a problem until you do.
Until you do. And when you have those problems, especially when it comes to like, backups and things like that, they can be really costly. Not only, the potential for somebody to sue you if you've lost their wedding photos or something like that, but also I mean, you mentioned stress, like the amount of time and stress that gets poured into like a failed hard drive that's not backed up properly.
Mm,
You don't get those like gray hairs back.
you see
They
this?
are permanent.
Yeah. I had something like that happen with a subcontractor who was working for me on a wedding who lost 75% of the wedding video.
Painful. I hate
Yeah.
it's like
And
it
like,
turns my stomach every time I hear those stories.
yeah, there were a lot of things that went into that, like what happened. And it made me completely change my system for how I talk to my subcontractors about, if you're not giving me first of all, I try to get everything at the end of the event now. Like I give
Yeah,
them memory cards and be like, okay, just hand those back to me at the end of the night. We're not going to just to eliminate as much of that as possible.
sure.
Um, but yeah, that made me like, I would say like, okay, when you get home, if you're not giving me the card and I'm taking it with me, this is what you do. This is how you create a redundant backup, like instructing people, because, you don't know unless you
Yeah,
have the conversation with people that you're working with. Hey, and also putting it into my agreements with my, subcontractors. This is on you. If you're not giving me the card, like if something happens, you're responsible for data recovery, because, it's part of you doing the job for me, is
yeah,
like taking care of those files. So yeah, like
yeah,
I had to create an entire other system for handling, you know, subcontractors because of that experience and going like, wow, that is just something I had not been prepared
right.
to do.
Yeah,
And I realized I needed something to handle it, because you're right. When it happens, when there's a failure of some kind, the amount of time and stress that you have to deal with, not just the expense, because it is expensive. When you
hmm,
deal all that, like how much is it worth it to you?
right.
Like, to not only avoid the amount of money it's going to cost you. I tell you, first of all, memory is cheap.
Yeah,
Getting cloud storage backup, plus like I have, redundant hard drive, external hard drive backups that like take out of the computer and store somewhere else, but also a cloud backup. It is worth it. Let me just tell you, anybody
Yeah.
listening to this, should you be doing something, you have a contract with a client, it is worth it to have those redundant
Yeah.
backups.
Proactivity versus reactivity, which
Yep.
actually kind of brings me to something that I thought I was going to jump in with at the very beginning, which is this little silly story that I made up a couple of years ago to kind of, I feel like this is one of those things where you and I have both been around the block more than a few times. And so at this stage of the game, it's evident. It's like, nope, this is a no-brainer piece of advice. Like, go set up your systems, write them out, get them, out of your head and onto paper, be diligent about executing them the same ways, improve them when you need to improve them, all those different things. But when you are newer or when you are busy in the way that oftentimes someone who doesn't have really good systems feels really busy because they're doing all the things and managing all the pieces in their heads, it can be really hard. You can say, yeah, I know I should do this, but I'll do it later. I'll
Right.
do it when I have a break. So everybody knows the story of the three little pigs, right? Like the house made of straw and twigs and bricks, and the big bad wolf and the whole thing. So I made up this little like extension of that story where the big bad wolf is long gone. The pigs are free of that. But unfortunately, there is this big drought. And so they are sitting around, very, very thirsty and suffering because of the lack of water. And so one day, lo and behold, it begins to rain. And as the rain starts to come down, the little pig comes out of his house of straw, the first little brother comes out of his house of straw and, tosses his head back and opens his mouth and starts frantically running around trying to catch raindrops. Mm-hmm. And then the second little pig comes out of his house made of sticks. And as before, he has done a little bit more preparation than his brother. So he's got a 5-gallon bucket, maybe from Home Depot, one of those orange buckets. And he's going around and he's like trying to find the right place to catch the water. And so he's doing, he's got a bucket. He's going to collect water, not just for that very minute. But the third little pig is nowhere to be seen. So an hour or so goes by, the rain starts to let up. And the first little pig is like laying on the ground, passed out, totally exhausted from having, tried to catch all this rain. The second little pig is also exhausted because he's been, carrying this bucket around and trying to do stuff, but he has like a gallon of water in the bucket. So he's feeling pretty good because he's not going to die of thirst that day. And then lo and behold, the rain stops and the third little pig walks out of his front door, house made of bricks, walks around to the side of the house. He's got a cup with him and he goes over to the rain barrel that he has installed with, a gutter system and a rain collection system on the roof. And he opens the tap and has the first of a month's worth of water there waiting for him. And the reason that I like to tell this story is because of that proactivity versus reactivity thing that we were just talking about. A system can't serve you
Right.
until you have set it up. And the work that goes into setting it up with a little bit of anticipation, knowing that like this is a problem or this is something that needs to be done in my business on a recurring basis, or, this is something I'm anticipating. The time to set up the system for that eventuality is now. And then you can always tweak and improve. You can always add things like software solutions and stuff like that later on down the road. But defining exactly what it is that you're trying to do and then creating some system, so even if it's a super basic system,
right,
a system in order to get there is going to take you from that like crazy reactive situation to the slightly modified. And I feel like the middle ground is kind of when you it's like you have steps and you know what they are and you can speak them, but you haven't really started to
formulate it.
Yeah, you haven't, and you haven't taken any of those steps to kind of standardize them or automate any of it. And then the third is really where you do have something, tools that are helping you, or you're outsourcing pieces of it, things like that.
Yeah, it's the I suffer from this as well. Like I'll do that when I have a break, self-talk.
Oh yeah.
The other one is what I try to remind myself. I try to get into the habit of going, there's never a break,
No.
because there really isn't. I mean, it's not the one you think you're going to get. Because then you're like constantly like, oh, I got to get the work, and then I got to do this. Once I get the work, then I've got to do the editing, and I've got to keep trying to get the work for next time. And setting up those systems for me was a real game changer. Like, not even just like the automated stuff or the software or anything, like just like you said, having a process to go through
Yeah.
every time. I have a process I go through every time when somebody contacts me about doing a job. I have a process that I go through, and it's slightly different for each different kind of shoot that I do. You know, engagement session is different than, a corporate shot. It's different from a wedding. I handle those things differently, you know, but I have a system for each one.
Mhm.
Were they all pretty similar when I started? Yeah. But like you said, over time, I adjusted each one to fit more precisely with that type of job. I didn't
Yeah.
have that all figured out at the beginning. It was over time going like, you know what? This type of client doesn't need this. They need
Right.
something else. So I'm going to add that into my workflow for that type of job. It's not all, homogenous, but at the beginning it was, because I
Yeah.
was like, I needed something to set up. And then eventually, through experience, knowing what individual clients need differently made me formulate that, oh, here's an adjustment for each type.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to like start with everything figured out. I think that
Well,
is
you can't.
yeah, because you don't know what you need.
Yeah. And when you are in that mindset of like, well, I'm not ready to do that yet, then you're getting stuck in that like sort of done, the perfectionist's trap,
Yeah.
right? And it really is.
Guilty.
I was going to say me too. But this is one of those situations where done is way better than perfect. There is no perfect. You will always be sort of working toward that. But the only way that you can start to assess where the problems are, where things are working, where they're not, is to have it out, codified, on paper or on your computer in a place where you can go and review it. And that's when you'll start to notice the issues.
Yeah, because you can see where the holes are, or you can like, you get yourself, you can view it and go like, oh, this is where this system is failing me, or there's a hole in my, information where I need to get more information that tells me, where I'm losing business or where I'm spending too much money. Again, this is a conversation you can have on pretty much every level of your business,
Yeah.
and about, keeping track of your advertising
Yeah.
and how much money. Like, one of the things that really helped me spend money properly, as far as or where it was most effective, because I would have people like, when I was young and, silly and didn't know, where, like, about advertising for, like, who was I trying to reach. I'd have somebody contact me and be like, "Oh, this our little flyer magazine newsletter whatever thing like reaches X thousands
Oh, right,
number of
right.
people," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I want to be in there. I want all
Yeah.
of it." Instead of knowing like, "Oh, I got to go at the people who are actually interested in buying
Right.
my product,
Yep.
not just throwing a huge net over everyone, but adding something into my inquiry form that said, how did you find me?
Mm-hmm.
Did you find me by doing a Google search? Did you find me from this? Did someone recommend you? Uh, if so, who? So I can thank
Yeah.
that person and also know who's referring me the most.
Sure.
Is it another vendor? Is it word of mouth? Or what platform where I advertise was it one of those, like, and having those options there and like a drop down list, not like saying type it in, because if you say type it in, people don't want to type it in. They'll
Right.
hit that drop down and go like, oh, it was a Google search, or yeah, okay, yeah, somebody told me about you. um because then you start to see that pattern again. This is how you save money and get more clients, and I think this is why more people, like, everybody's kind of interested in that. Instead of paying money on advertising that doesn't work, when you start to see that pattern of like, oh, nobody's actually booking me who's coming in from that particular avenue, and it's
Right.
again the same sort of thing as like seeing when you start tracking that information, you see where they came from. Did they book? If they didn't book, why didn't they book? And if you start to see the pattern of like, oh, everybody who comes from this source is not in my budget, you're like, okay, I don't need to pay his money. That I don't need to do that advertising. Those are not
Yeah.
my people,
Yeah.
and it's okay. I think that's also a problem that most people who are starting out have, is that they don't realize that it's okay that there are people who are not your clients.
Sure.
But that's how you identify that. Like you identify like the people who leave because they didn't have like whatever reason why they didn't hire you. And I always tell people, ask the question. The worst you're going to get is a no answer from somebody who doesn't hire you. But that is some of the most important information you can get. And it's one of
Yeah.
the most important systems that I've ever set up for my business. Was why did you make a decision to hire somebody else? And it taught me so much about what I was doing wrong in meetings and pricing and things on my website. There were people who'd be like, "Oh, we wanted somebody who had experience doing this," and I'm like, "I have experience doing that." Then I go look at my website and I go, "Oh, that's not something that I feature
Yeah.
very prominently. Do I want to feature that prominently?" And like that, making changes accordingly if I
Yeah.
want to, or people saying like they offered this service. I'm like, but I offer that service. Oh yeah, again, I didn't have like a section where it calls out that I offer that product or whatever. Knowing gives you knowing is half the battle.
Yeah.
Just leave it at that.
Well, it's kind of the difference, to take it back to this silly pig metaphor thing. If you are running around trying to catch raindrops in your mouth, there is no rhyme or reason to where the raindrops are falling, right? They're coming out of the sky. If you're in the right place at the right time, good for you. Otherwise, that's too bad. When you've got a gutter system and a rain barrel, if there's a leak, you can identify where that is,
Right.
and you can fix the leak, and you can focus your energy on just that one thing. But the compound results that come from that fixed leak
Yeah.
are huge versus just like a one drop versus not one drop. And
Right.
so, if you, I always, and this is how I learn, is thinking about things and how they relate to other stuff. And so if there's anything that, somebody listening to this can take away, it really is you have to make the time to step back and work on your business, no matter how busy you think you are in your business. When there are problems, even if the problem is that you are working too much, then part of it is that you need to put it on your calendar that I'm taking this week and I am evaluating what's happening, or I'm taking one day per week,
Right.
or 2 hours in a day, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that, depending on how you are at time management, and I have suffered at times in my life from being horrible at managing my time to being, I think, better at it now.
Mhm.
Maybe. I still like struggle at times, but the thing is like you said, finding where you can the time to make those choices in your business, and carving out whatever digestible chunk you can, because sometimes people might not have a week, and but like you can take an hour or 2 hours and just keep chopping away at it, and eventually the tree will fall and you will have the reward of all of the this firewood that you can then
Right.
like burn. Like it's again, more metaphors, but it's if you take the time, it's going to, I think this is one of those things that really photographers, any type of creative, can benefit from, because we tend not to be very business minded.
Right.
Creative people don't, generally have like great business minds. Those who do, kudos. But finding those ways to do business better, and again, work smarter, not harder, and use your leverage. So that being said, kind of wrap up a little bit. Like, do you have any other advice for people who are interested in implementing systems in their photography business?
Well, if it's okay, I would love to share a resource that I put together to kind of organize your brain around the systems in your business. Because I think that when you and I have covered, I don't know, we have just mentioned in the course of this conversation 20 or more different systems that you need to have in your business, which feels pretty like a lot.
Yeah.
But I really do think that actually your business comes down to kind of three basic systems. It's your marketing system, your sales system, and then your fulfillment system, right? So it's just, if you think about your client journey end to end, that's kind of the way that it runs. And so I put together I have a short video that sort of walks you through it. And then there's a worksheet kind of a thing that people can go through to map this out. It's an exercise that, depending on if you've ever done anything like this, it's going to take you maybe an hour and a half. But it kind of helps you do what we've been talking about, where you're getting these steps that we all follow. I mean, we all have some kind of system, whether we call it that or not, out of your head and onto paper, so that you can start to identify where those issues are and then tackle them one by one, or start to create systems one by one. And yeah, I'd love to share that. I think what I would probably do is just put it on a page. My website is thiscan'tbethathard.com. And I'll put it at thiscan'tbethathard.com/Casey. Does that work?
That works. I'll put that link in the episode notes as well, so that people can just go in there and click on it, and you don't have to leave. You don't have to leave your podcast platform. You can go right in there.
Exactly. And yeah, that would be where I would recommend that people start if they are brand new. And if you're not brand new, then I would just say, take a time out, put this on your calendar, give yourself that time and space, however frequently that you feel like you can make that happen. That will come back to pay dividends over time.
Photographers, it's time to revolutionize your workflow with Aftershoot. Imagine culling through thousands of images in a matter of minutes, effortlessly flagging blurry shots and closed-eye pictures. Now you can stop imagining and meet your new photography sidekick, Aftershoot, the game-changing AI photo culling and editing software. Say goodbye to hours spent sifting through images, as Aftershoot's AI can cull thousands of photos in just a few minutes, grouping together similar shots and flagging those blurry or closed-eye pics. I have been using Aftershoot for a little over a year, and I have to say, it has transformed the workflow on the portrait side of my business, culling and organizing my photos from family portrait sessions to corporate headshots in a matter of minutes. For engagements, events, and weddings, it does a great job as a first pass cull for me, since I like to go through and make sure I didn't miss anything, but those family and group photos are all solidly organized together, and that saves me so much time. You can also make your artistic vision a reality. Aftershoot's automated AI editing is customizable to your unique style. Edit thousands of images in just a few clicks, achieving consistency and brilliance effortlessly. Sign up now at nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/aftershoot and experience the Aftershoot advantage with your first month free. Transform your workflow and transform your business. Go to nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/aftershoot or click the link in the episode notes and free up time for what you love by letting AI handle the heavy lifting, so you can focus on capturing moments and not sorting through them. Hey photographers, are you ready to say goodbye to the chaos of scattered contracts, missed leads, and disorganized schedules? Then you should try Pixify, your all-in-one client relationship management software that'll take your business to the next level. Pixify brings order to your business chaos by streamlining your workflow, manage digital contracts, effortlessly track leads and clients, and organize your schedule, all from one intuitive platform. Impress your clients with personalized and branded communications. From email templates to booking pages, Pixify ensures every interaction reflects your unique brand, building trust and loyalty. You can say goodbye to scheduling headaches. Pixify's scheduling tools make it easy for you to book appointments with clients and for you to keep your calendar organized. Deliver a VIP experience with personalized client portals. Your clients can access important documents, view their project progress, and interact with ease. And most importantly, no more chasing payments. Pixify automates your invoicing and payment processing, ensuring you get paid on time, every time. I've been using Pixify for over a decade, and it has saved me countless hours and a lot of money. I tried a number of other CRM options before settling on Pixify because Pixify offered the most robust set of tools that also allowed me to truly connect and foster my relationships with my clients. I highly recommend it. And you can save 20% on annual Pixify programs when you use our link, nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/Pixify. You can also find that link in the episode notes. Save big money and save yourself time. Time, the one thing which you can never get back. Pixify saves me hundreds of hours every year that I can spend on tasks that make my business money or by just relaxing and getting away from work. So what are you waiting for? Visit nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/Pixify and save 20% today.
Hey. And now for my favorite part of the show. What's that say? Useless information. This is always death.
Did you know that human beings landed on the moon before they invented wheels on suitcases?
That's amazing.
The first rolling luggage was not invented until 1970, a year after the moon landing. It's like, we were focusing all of our efforts on the space race and that, thinking like, what about, something a little closer to home that we can make our life easier. I mean, I don't know how about you and getting my camera gear around for weddings. It's very like, you have a rolling bag. Do you have a backpack? What do you have?
Yeah, exactly. I have a rolling bag and a backpack.
Yeah. I mean, there were years where I had like this, it wasn't a messenger bag. It was huge, but it had a shoulder strap and I would carry all of my gear in there. So I would just like reach in and switch lens. And one of my second photographers who we're friends still to this day. It's been like, I don't know, 15 years since we started working together. And he's like, you're like a bear, man. Like you're just like walking around carrying like 50 pounds of gear on you at all times for 8 to 12 hours. He's like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know. And I was like, it's not good for me. I figured out it wasn't
but it's good for your chiropractor. That's
made them a lot of money. But the switch to a rolling bag was one of the best best choices I could have ever made.
Simple solutions are often the most often overlooked and yet the best.
Exactly. Annemie, thank you so much for being on. Where can people find you and your podcast?
Thank you very much. Yeah. So it's all under the This Can't Be That Hard umbrella, thiscan'tbethathard.com. And then the podcast is the same and the Instagram is the same.
I'll include those links in the episode notes as well. Annemie, you're very welcome to come back anytime you want. Just let me know.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Have a great day.
You too. And welcome back, my dear nerdy photo crew. Many thanks to Annemie Tonken for joining us and dropping some knowledge about photo business systems. Be sure to go to the episode notes and check out Annemie's links and get that freebie. While you're at it, you can also follow the Nerdy Photographer on the social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Reddit. It's at The Nerdy Photo, all one word, no underscores, dots, or dashes, at The Nerdy Photo. Tell us what your thoughts were about this or any other episode. Leave your photography-related questions or tell us what topics you'd like to hear about on future episodes of the Nerdy Photographer podcast.
Snug, snug, snug. Snug.
Wait, what do you mean you set the release timer? You're supposed to do that after we get back to the ship. Snug! Until next time, everyone, stay safe and stay nerdy.
Who's that coming back to town? You better start listening. Who's your heart been beating about? You better listen.